And with that, we're live for episode 151, our 2020 year finale of Trek Live. How you doing this morning, Dan?
Doing good. A little bittersweet. Sweet that we get to talk about Star Trek. A little bit bitter that it's the last weekend of our year here at Trek Live. But I think we've got some big stuff coming for 2021 that Bill and I've been working on for a good while. So excited.
Yeah, we have some new things planned and got some ideas for topics that we've kind of been holding off on. Definitely looking forward to changing it up a little bit and doing some new things, doing some of the old things too. And it's always good to, I think, take a couple of weeks at the end of the year when, I think everybody's got a little less, most people have less than usual going on for the holidays and everything, but
Yes.
everything 2020. But it'll be good to have time to like reflect and take a few weeks off and really think about it and just examine what we've been doing and start 2021 fresh with all of our creative juices flowing and all that good stuff. So so we'll be back in early January. We're going to continue, at least for the next few weeks, on course heading on Saturday mornings as Star Trek Discovery winds down season 3. Just a few more weeks to go. So we'll still be doing live content here and there to talk about that. But as far as our kind of weekly, broader Star Trek discussion over here on Trek Live, our main show, we'll be back in early January after today. But as for today, what are we talking about today?
I just finished my Deep Space Nine Season 2 rewatch, moving on to Season 3, but as we like to do here, we like to cover the season in the form of a see it or skip it, essential viewing type of discussion. So that's where we're going today.
There's so many different ways to, review episodes. I do letter grades. People do 4 stars, 5 stars, 1 out of 10. You've always been a fan of the sort of old Siskel and Ebert thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yep.
Trek geeks do the same thing. They do see it, skip it as well. So it's a well-known way to go. Very simple. Yes, no, up or down. And that's how we're going to do it. And you like to look at it, correct me if I'm wrong, as if you were like going to curate an order, if you were going to like do a shorter, slimmer down version of Deep Space Nine, what can you afford to lose? So your see it, skip it might not even necessarily completely reflect like, is the episode high quality or not? There might be a see it
exactly
you're not in love with, but you feel like it's too important to miss.
Exactly. That's a point that I'd like to make, is that I might not agree with some of the things in the episode. Maybe it's more of a middle-of-the-road episode, but there are things in it that are essential for the story at hand. So if you see an episode that's maybe like that and see it by it, that's why. That's why I feel like there's some stuff in there that's essential. I think I have to go back and check, but for example, let's say I can't remember if I said this or not, but a storyteller from season 1 is a notoriously not very good episode, but I think there is some good Bashir O'Brien stuff in it that's essential for the story. So could be wrong. I may have said skipping on that, but
I think you did see it. I'm pretty sure you said see it, but you made that caveat very clear when we did season 1. You talked about that you're not in love with the episode. You're certainly not going to put it on like any kind of top 10 list.
Exactly
for season 1, but it does contain some pretty important character development for that relationship, which looms so large over the show as a whole. So it becomes, if you're going to curate and you're going to try to whittle down to the most essential stuff, you felt like that would be important to have as like the starting point for that friendship. So it's just a fun way to look at it, and all these things are just kind of vehicles to get us to a point where we talk about these episodes and look at them and shake them around, see which ones we feel the same on. Maybe there are a few that we have different thoughts on, and we'll go from there. We don't typically, we'll see how it goes. We don't plan these incredibly in-depthly. We're going to put them up on the screen, all the episodes, your sort of designation for them. And we're going to bounce around, talk about what kind of stands out. We're not going to go chronological this episode, then that episode, then that episode.
Yeah.
We'll be all over the place and talk about what kind of stands out to us. But I think we're going to get started with that now. We're going to hold off on too much rewatch recap. I'll just tell you real quick. I'm into the beginning of Deep Space Nine, which is sort of a big deal for me. I overlap shows when I rewatch. I tend to go in like strict air date order. So I when I get to the point when Deep Space Nine sort of comes into play while TNG's running, I overlap and I go back and forth between shows. So, like last night, I watched Chain of Command parts 1 and 2, and then Emissary, and then a little run of Deep Space Nine episodes, and then Ship in a Bottle from TNG. So for the next foreseeable future, while I'm rewatching, it'll be like an episode here and there of both of those series. And it'll be like that pretty much until Deep Space Nine ends, of course, because Deep Space Nine ran concurrently with TNG and then Voyager. So, interesting way to watch, different than just kind of powering through a show. But I am enjoying it as always, and we'll be talking about it more. This is this episode of Trek Live is really one big rewatch recap, just specific to Dan's experience with season 2 as he just finished that. So we'll get right into it here, and I'm going to put it up on the screen. And there are things that stand out to me right away. A lot of green, a lot of seats, which is cool.
Yeah,
it tells me it was a fairly successful season, with at least building the show up and offering some important developments. The first thing that sort of stands out to me is the trio of early episodes, the little 1, 2, 3 parter with the Homecoming, the Circle, and the Siege. You got to skip it in there. I'm curious, like what has you?
That's on my toughest call list. I think there's some stuff in there that just I don't know. I don't know if I cared for it. It is a first taste of a serialization that we kind of get from Deep Space Nine, which is kind of cool to see. But overall season. I think this might be one of the turning points for Deep Space Nine. I'm going to talk about a few episodes here that are really like a TNG light script or story that I could plug in the TNG cast and it would kind of fit right in. But there is some episodes that are true, what we come to know of Deep Space Nine, where it builds off the premise. It can only be these characters and how these characters react, and then sprinkling in that serialization. So I think this is kind of where we start to see some turning points as far as like, okay, we're kind of splitting off from TNG Light a little bit and then going into things. So we get some good stuff from Sisko and Jake. Their relationship starts to build a little bit. Talk about Jake's future. At the end of the season, we really get some good Kira and Odo stuff. Again, it builds off the Odo and Quark stuff as well. Their interesting dynamic and relationship. So I think it's a turning point for Bashir and O'Brien here as well as characters and their relationship. So we get a lot of stuff in this. Bill said at the top that there is a lot of green here, and I actually have the actual specifics here. So we got 18 seats. That's a lot of seats. Again, I can't stress enough that maybe the episode isn't the best, but there's things in it that I think is essential that you need to see. So 8 skip-its. As opposed to season 1, we get 11 seats and 9 skips. It's different because the season's a little bit shorter, but I think there's a little bit of a turning point from positive here to more of an even-keeled first season. So,
from a percentage standpoint, the percentage of skip-its in season 2 is certainly smaller than season 1. A little more 50-50 there with season 1.
And I have no back-to-back skip-its. So I like all this knowledge and all this data is saying that even when there's a kind of a middle of the road episode, I think there's some stuff in it that is essential for viewing. So I'll give you an example. Melora is one of my tough calls list. Again, this kind of story talks about it's early in the season, but I think it could be a TNG light script where I could see this on any other show.
Sure.
But I think why I put skip it is the way Bashir, you can see him change. See it is you see his character change, and he's a little bit more mature and just different from season 1. So I think that's maybe puts it over the edge for see it.
That's an interesting way to look at Melora for sure. Dr. Bashir, they lean really heavily into the sort of green, almost arrogant, like leap before you think kind of approach. Very eager to be on an adventure and put himself out there and to just kind of go and sometimes early in the show maybe a little bit of a selfish approach to things, and I do think seeing him in Melora does offer a different shade to his character and does start to three-dimensionalize his character. I think it does start to show a little more of a different approach that becomes more apparent as we get going and the show corrects a little bit and gets to know the character and learns how to write the characters in ways that are interesting and work best, as all shows do. I think Laura does kind of. It's an episode that gets beat around a little bit and gets knocked around, but it does represent a little bit of a shift for Dr. Bashir. So I like that. It's definitely a good point when you look at the episodes through that lens.
Another thing I noticed is there's a lot of twisty-turny, kind of at the end twists at the end.
Yeah.
We get whispers. The Jim Hadar kind of. I mean, I don't know if it's in this. I get confused with into season 3, but there's some turny things that you don't get maybe retconned and things like that. So that's another thing that I noticed about this season.
Yeah, the collaborator has a big twist at the end. I feel like they pull out
a
trick at the end. Necessary Evil's got some twists in it that. Some big reveals. So you're right. I do think that's something that they do.
Yeah.
A good bit. Even the 3-parter at the end of the Homecoming. Kira being relieved of duty, and sent back to the Bajor. Like they definitely do have some big swings at the end of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So I'm looking at my eye kind of automatically goes to the red skip-its because there aren't that many of them. And I'm curious to ask you, what do you think the weakest episode of the season is?
Probably Second Sight.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's a really TNG light kind of episode. There's things in it that I like. I like the exploration of, Sisko moving on from such a tough loss with his wife. Cool. But that's a tough watch. I think it could be plugged into any show like a TNG light that I keep mentioning, but that one's tough to kind of get through, which is interesting because it's such a kind of a sci-fi concept-y thing. Mm-hmm. But I think that might be my worst episode of the season.
I think I might agree with you. I would probably go there too. It's just I don't find it it's not offensively bad. It doesn't. It's certainly no code of honor. Like it doesn't go that far off the rails. It's not. I wouldn't say it's as difficult to get through as say "And the Children Shall Lead" or the Alternative Factor from TOS, but it just kind of lays there. There's not a whole lot of life. It's kind of slow, kind of meandering. But you're right, though. I mean, I guess the big selling point for it, if you wanted to advocate for it, is a representation of Sisko's process with Jennifer, and
Yeah.
it doesn't it's a vehicle that allows the show to not forget that Sisko is a widower. Like he's dealing with the loss of a spouse, which through all the dynamics of the show, it can be easy to sort of drop and not go back to. So this is at least doubling back to that idea and keeping it on the forefront of Sisko's character, which I do think is important and a good choice. Having just watched Emissary myself, that's such a huge part of that pilot and such a huge part of introducing that character. I just wish it was done with a more dynamic, approach as opposed to sort of a romance of the week that you kind of know is going nowhere and doesn't have a ton of chemistry.
I also think that another big thing this season is we get to see how much not just Deep Space Nine matters to Sisko, but the uniform. So I think starting with Paradise, he sticks to his morals in that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some tough stuff. There's some tough stuff in that with him. And then we get the Maquis with his friend that has thrown the uniform aside, and there's some good uniform stuff in that. So I think there's some really good stuff for Sisko in this season as well.
Yeah, agreed. All that stuff is true. I do think Sisko's got. Yeah, I think this season does a good job with Sisko. Fitzcal Herb's in the room and talks about that our discussion helps him like Melora more. Be nice if they had explored rights of those disabled more. Clearly she was disabled, but that's a metaphor for that. That's definitely another unique point of Melora. It's sort of an anomalous exploration of disabled people being able to be in Starfleet and function and have a career, and the trials and tribulations of that sort of experience. So there are some unique things that are tackled in Melora that I think make it an interesting episode. It's not a favorite of mine either, but it's certainly not an empty shell, I would say.
Yeah.
You mentioned Paradise. I really like that episode a lot. We talked about that a few weeks ago as when you hit it. It's always been sort of an underrated favorite. It's another one you've mentioned a couple of times. Some of these episodes you can kind of repackage and sort of deliver to the next generation or maybe Voyager. Yeah. And Paradise is definitely one of those. I think it's more successful than some of the ones that you maybe pointed out as being not quite as successful episode. Yeah. But I think you can easily sort of envision Paradise, that sort of story, working with. Instead of Sisko, it's Janeway. Instead of O'Brien, it's Torres, or it's Picard and Geordi, or it's Archer and Trip. Like the same sort of story can work in any show, which sometimes, especially as we get later into Deep Space Nine, a lot of the episodes that we'll have up on the screen for those seasons are very specific and can only really be Deep Space Nine stories. And I think in Season 2, before the show really fully gets going with its big, serialized storytelling with the Dominion and all that stuff, it's easier to find episodes that could work anywhere. So at the end of the season, I think once you get through Profit and Loss, you're pretty much straight Seeds except for Tribunal. So it would be fair to say that the season ends really strong.
It really does. And the two-parter, I could again, that's one of those things where I could see maybe a different crew plugged in there, like we've been saying. But I really, when you pair it with, Sisko really didn't want to be here, but now he's just standing up for kind of what he believes in. So I think you really need that two-parter in there. And then after that two-parter, the Maquis, you just get, Tribunal, definitely on one of my tough calls. But again, that's Tribunal is an episode where again I could see someone being on trial, just as any other crew would. But that's a good run. The Wire crossover. I'm not a big alternate or mirror universe kind of supporter or lover, but I really do like crossover, like we talked about I think last week. But last week we talked about crossover a little bit. The Collaborator, I really enjoyed. I think there's some really good stuff of building on this premise. But again, we're getting, we're seeing, changing our perspective on people and on things in the war, which was so good. There's some gut punch moments in that episode, and then we get into kind of the intro Dominion stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious to talk about Tribunal for a second, just because we haven't, through our rewatch recaps through regular Trek Live episodes. We're not doing this. You just watched that this week, so we haven't talked about it.
Yeah,
and it has a skipping on it. I think I agree with you that it's not. It certainly doesn't impact the overall arc of the series story as much as some other episodes maybe do.
Yeah,
and it's a courtroom drama, and even coming off of, if you watch them the way I watch them, it's not too far off from Chain of Command, which is sort of a similar, Cardassians abduct a crew member, and there's some torturous stuff going on. It's pretty tough to watch. This one goes more into the justice system of the Cardassians. I really like the production design of it, the sort of multi-level, courtroom, dark, dingy, weird, bizarre. I think they do a nice job of making it feel, not just a repackaged, typical human courtroom setting. It's weird and other and scary and alien. I like the production design choices there. I like the direction. I like the actor who plays O'Brien.
Yeah, the guest stars.
Advocate.
Yeah, it's strong. Yeah,
he's really strong. He's got some. I love when he panics. Where he's he desperately just wants to be not involved with this.
Yeah.
He's a good actor, good character. It was your skip it mostly motivated by it just sort of being a one-off courtroom drama that doesn't necessarily have much consequence in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. And the way it was paced and how it was kind of cut was really interesting too. It's really fast paced, which I get. I guess what they're trying to point out is the justice system is just quick.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, and I just coming off Discovery, they just had a courtroom drama that was long and kind of drawn out and emotional, and maybe that went into it as well. But it just seemed like it was missing too much, and it was just skip it. I think.
Okay. Fitzical Herb mentioned Blood Oath. It says from Blood Oath on, it gets really strong. Blood Oath is definitely way up there for me. Strong Klingon episode, really good backstory for Dax. I think that might be the episode. I think there's Playing God a couple episodes before this, which is also a big Dax episode. And you have to see it on it, so I'm assuming that's related to Dax's development and everything, and Trill.
Yeah, because we get a lot of backstory on the Trill and even her. Kind of relationship with Curzon is not the best.
Yeah.
And so I think that's definitely a see it. I would say maybe a middle of the road episode.
Yeah.
The guest star on that may be a little bit over dramatic in some points, but I think because of the backstory and stuff, that's why there's a see it on Playing God.
Yeah, I think that's why I like doing it this way. I like taking that approach with this episode, with looking at the episodes this way, because I would. Off the top of my head, when I think of an episode like Playing God, I'm thinking C minus maybe. It's not
C minus,
easily. Not a great episode. Like you said, I'm not a huge fan of the guest star. I think that maybe one of the weaker, from this season especially, big guest star performances. But when you think about it through the lens of what does it do for the character that it's focused on, and how much background does it deliver that gives context to not just that specific character, but the culture and society that character comes from, and stuff that you're going to carry with you in your head into future episodes that are more successful. That's a different ball of wax, and I think an episode like Playing God benefits from that kind of analysis and looking at it that way. I think it does deliver some good things that pay off later, even though the episode might not be as successful for me. I'm sure there are folks out there who are big fans and like it a lot for all those reasons, that it's important for Dax and the Trill. But my mind would go more toward, like I just did, I started talking about Blood Oath as the turning point for Dax.
Yeah.
Because it's a big swing. It's a successful episode. It's really well liked by most people across the board. Brings back old TOS Klingons. Like, there's a lot of big stuff in it, and it does move Dax's character forward. But I think arguably Playing God does just as much of the lifting as far as background, like you said, with her relationship with Curzon and the whole like Trill initiative, like finding a host and how that process works, and the trials that go through that. Like, it's not just they randomly pick somebody off the street and give a person a symptom.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole process involved, and it's not always the easiest thing. And there are a lot of people out there who are struggling and really want it but can't for this reason or that. And Jadzia was one of them. It was a struggle for her, and there's a lot of big developments there that I think are important to have in mind. Maybe even more so than Blood Oath. When you boil it all down. So interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah.
Are there what episodes that have see it on them would you kind of put in that category, like Playing God? That you would maybe say, if you were doing like a letter grade system or 1 to 4 stars, might be on the lower side of things, but you feel like they're important enough, or have that
maybe Armageddon game, maybe.
Okay.
Just because I think there's some good stuff with the Bashir and O'Brien relationship. But again, this is a story that I could easily see in TNG, or in Voyager, or in any other show. I think there's some really middle of the road aspects to this. Yeah, and again, the next episode, Whispers, I feel like is the same thing. Like, it's, but because of the almost near death experience that O'Brien has, I think he has a new appreciation for a new relationship. Definitely another turning point in their relationship, especially coming off the heels of Rivals.
Yeah.
Things like that. So yeah, Armageddon game, maybe kind of a middle of the road, definitely straightforward type of story and episode. But I really think that because of that relationship, definitely see it.
Agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Rivals, we even talked about when you saw it weeks and weeks ago, being in this kind of ballpark. I think you may have even like tipped your hand a little bit and said it's going to be a see it because of the O'Brien Bashir stuff with the racquetball and developing their relationship. But I remember you saying like the guest star, the rival bar owner guy was not your favorite character, and didn't necessarily love all that stuff. But the O'Brien Bashir stuff felt important enough to give the episode some weight. And I would agree with that. It's not a favorite of mine at all. I really have a hard time with that sleazy other bar owner. I think he makes Quark look like an upstanding citizen, and just not likable in any way. But the O'Brien Bashir stuff is fun. For sure.
Yeah, and Sanctuary too. I mean, we talked about this a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, we had a lot of Sanctuary.
I think it's definitely maybe more type of quoted as like an alien of the week kind of story, but when you think about the reflection on how Bajor is not ready still in season 2, and they're still working through this provisional government and the struggles of that with that, I really think Sanctuary is see it, which you can go take a look at that episode. We talk all about it. It's definitely a big kind of concept. But I really think that the Bajor stuff, and it's a small thing, but it to me it's a big thing in that we're still developing this society that's in shambles still, and I love that it's not just from one season to the next everything's okay. No, we're still not ready. There's still things we got to work through. Can't mention Sanctuary enough.
I think the early part of the season, especially if you look at like that first batch of 10, before you get out of that first column on the screen for those who are watching the video, and 1 through 10, I think you look at the first 3, Homecoming, The Circle, The Siege, heavy Bajoran lore, building, what's the provisional government doing, what's the picking up the pieces from the occupation, even Cardassians, that's dealing with the fallout of the occupation.
Oh yeah, big time.
Orphan Cardassian child with the Bajoran family, dealing with the aftermath of the occupation, Necessary Evil, all about that, and then Sanctuary.
Yeah.
Like that's more than 50% of those first 10 episodes are really heavily exploring where the Bajorans are and taking advantage of the fact that we are orbiting that planet, and it's not just doing like random. The show's not really that interested in doing completely random adventures of the week. They're making sure that they're really developing and doing the work to build on their setting and where the show is set and why and the things that we're stuck with Bajorans. I think as the show goes on and we're into that next row of 10, maybe a little less focus there. You get some more at the back end with like Collaborators, a huge Bajoran focused episode. Rocky obviously deals with some of that a little further out. But some Bajoran stuff there too. But that you look at the way the season opens, and it really is swinging heavy on the sort of world building of the Bajorans and Cardassian dynamic.
Yeah. Back to Cardassians for a quick second. That decision with Sisko, that puts him in a no-win scenario. And I really like that about that episode. This is a tough no-win scenario. When I think of why he's out here and the tough calls that he make, if we're doing a maybe a top 10 toughest command decisions for a given captain. So let's say it's for Sisko. I think this might be on here. This is the tough no-win scenario for in that episode. So that's definitely a see it for me.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked before about one of the things that kind of draws me into certain episodes is something that I kind of look for, and I always appreciate when they can do it, is when Star Trek can end on, sounds kind of grim to say it, but end kind of on a low note. Like end in a way where nobody necessarily...
Cardassians does.
Where there's not a happy solution. I think particularly in like TOS, people like to point to the laugh out to the credits that you get in episodes like Galley of 7 and many others. But I think just as, maybe not just as often, but just as effectively and fairly often, you have these episodes like Cardassians and Necessary Evil's another one that really ends in a way that is like, whoa, like there's a kind of a gut punch at the end, and nobody feels great about where things stand at the end of the story. There was no happy way to sort of conclude it. And Cardassians is definitely a prime example of that, and definitely one of Sisko's toughest command decisions. Fitzy Calher mentioned real quick that one of the things that people love about Deep Space Nine is even in a mediocre episode, there is a serious character development. Can't always say the same for TNG. Still loves TNG, of course. But yeah, that's a fair thing to say. I think Deep Space Nine's strength as a show is certainly its character development and building the relationships between the characters, and what that allows for is even when you miss a little bit on an episode, there's still stuff in there that is really of value, and there are important building blocks and even misfires.
Yeah. Necessary Evil is definitely a gut punch one you mentioned, but I think this is where we start to see the relationship between Kira and Odo kind of start to develop from definitely friends, but maybe there's more, which I think we just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that one was a tough ending for sure.
And that gets built all the way now. Since I'm watching Deep Space Nine now, and I'm all the way at the very beginning, in past prologue, there are lines of dialogue. So going all the way back, right after the pilot, there are lines of dialogue about how well Odo knows Kira and how deep that relationship goes and how intimate it is. How much they know about each other, how well they know each other. That goes all the way back. And you're right. Necessary Evil is like the big step forward for that, where they really kind of commit to it and do something big with it. But there are little hints of it going all the way back that clearly make it obvious that I think it's one of the things that was in the foundation of the show, like one of the things that they kind of hinged on right at the beginning and locked in on, that this was going to be a relationship that they would build up, and this was going to be a dynamic that was going to loom large for the show. But yeah, Necessary Evil certainly, I think, the essential first big Kira Odo story.
Yeah. Yep.
Think what else? I'm gonna put you on the spot. If you had to do like a top 3, like what are the 3 best episodes of the season for you? Your 3
best
favorites.
Or best or favorites?
Both.
Uh,
Go wherever you would go with that.
That's the best. Um, Man, I think the best would probably be that latter half. Maybe Blood Oath,
Mm-hmm.
Collaborator, and maybe insert um one of the maybe The Wire or
Okay.
Jim Hadar or something like that. Favorite? I would say one of those. I definitely love Blood Oath. I love The Collaborator. Um, I like Sanctuary. I keep mentioning
Yeah, that's
it.
good. I love that show.
I definitely like that. Um, so yeah, I would say like definitely that latter half. I definitely think um, is probably the best. Um, you know, I think the best these best episodes have a few things in common. Like I said, like building off the premise. We're building off that Bajoran Cardassian kind of fallout of what's happening there. Um, so yeah, I would say those ones are definitely up there. Again, I really like Paradise too. That's like on the outside looking in, maybe. And Cardassians, and even Necessary Evil are definitely all top. I think maybe those 5 to 10 episodes, definitely of the season for sure. Um, yeah,
I love the fact that the collaborator is so high for you. I mean, I think that's a really strong episode, and it's got a lot of weight. Um,
yeah.
and
I
Fitzcarraldo mentions the collaborator right now too. I was going to say that I don't think you would find that on very many like Deep
Okay.
Space Nine top episode lists, but I
Yeah.
do. I'm always surprised by how good it is when I come back to it and hearing you talk about it and put it so high on your list.
Well, I love that. I'm terrible with names, but I love that it changes. Uh, um, Man, I
Barile,
forget his name. Ryle, from Kira's love interest to something else,
yeah,
to this loyalist, really putting the his I don't know, his duty or his above just kind of his personal gain, I guess, because
yeah,
he's up for kind of the biggest promotion you could get.
yeah, right,
But that was really cool to see that character change a little bit from just Kira's love interest to really like. But then again, it adds weight to previous episodes. Um, and previous characters as well. It does some really 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 good stuff.
mm.
Um, Again, this is another insight into some investigation that goes ugly, like Necessary Evil, where like okay, this some bad stuff happened in the war, and this I mean, sending your kin, your children to die for the greater good. Ooh, that for my money does not get better. Uh, so collaborators up for me.
Yeah, there's some big twists and turns and developments in the collaborator that really does
Yeah,
drive home that
spoilers.
that this is a big heavy. The occupation was ugly. Like there were some bad things that
Yeah,
went down,
yeah,
and good people were put in really bad positions and had to make really
yeah,
impossibly ugly decisions to just get through the day. And
yeah,
it does. It adds a lot of shades to the Barile character. I think up to that point, he's interesting. He's got a good relationship with Kira, and he's a kind of um, what's the word? Very stoic. Very
yeah. Soft
soft
spoken, kind of.
spoken, laid
Yeah,
back guy. But
yeah,
the collaborator really gives some context to his background that really, I think, adds some big weight to that character.
yeah,
Um, and yeah.
yeah. I get why maybe some people like. I think flashbacks maybe a little bit too heavy handed at times, and there's some things that bring it down for sure. But when you think of the grand scheme of things, it's like I can't get past it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it has to be up there for me.
there's some scenes towards the back end of that episode that really stick with you.
Yeah.
As the mystery sort of unfolds and Kira has to confront the
Mhm.
truth about what really
Yeah.
happened and who falls where in the grand scheme of things. Very, very, very strong stuff. Yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of Necessary Evil. That's way up there for me. I think that's such a. I love the film noir. Tones of that. I like when Star Trek can do that, and Deep Space Nine does it well. I think that might be my favorite Star Trek film noir episode. A Blood Oath, like you mentioned, way up there. A lot of fun. I love The Wire a lot for the Garrick character development, the open questions, the unknown, the ambiguity of
that's still at least at this point, there's still open questions.
Oh yeah,
like we had a whole episode about how many open questions there are, but I think it answers, it asks as many as it answers. So
yeah, I think the beauty of the Garrick character is I think most of the information that's useful to you about kind of getting to know Garrick is in what he does, not what he says. Like you can't pay attention to the stories he tells you. You can't put too much faith in his answers to questions, and you can't believe that he's telling you the truth about anything really. But it's what he does. It's what he chooses to do in these situations that I think is what informs you about that character. And tells you the kind of person that he is. I'm not saying he's a good person. He's a complicated person, for sure. And a richly three-dimensional character, but never simple and never. I think in past prologue he introduces himself as plain simple Garrick, and he's anything but. Like that's not. He's not plain and simple. He's just not.
But again, we get some good like doctor qualities of no matter what the person's done or said or is, they still worry about the health and safety of their patient.
Yep.
And that's what we get from Bashir in this, which is cool.
For sure. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. There's scenes where he's with Garrick and he's essentially withdrawing. He's going through withdrawal basically. As they're turning off this implant he's got in him, and he's exploding all over Bashir. And I think the way Bashir handles that and doesn't back down, I think most people it would be easy to say, well, F you, dude, like you're on your own.
Yeah.
He never does that. He stays with him, and he takes it on the chin all day, constantly, over and over and over again, and he's there for him. And I think that's especially when you think about where Bashir comes from at the beginning of the show and some of the qualities that you would define him with in season 1 and even in the very early part of season 2. I think those are big developments. You get him in Melora, like you said. I think I love that we talked about that because it gave me some new things to think about. But The Wire is certainly like the most notable episode that I think people would cite as like a classic that really
Bashir,
some of those really interesting colors. I think we've talked about a lot of them. We talked about the alternate a few weeks ago when you hit that one. I knew that would be a skip it. You weren't a huge fan of that. It's sort of a Odo, daddy problem kind of story with the Bajoran who developed him and worked with him as a newly discovered.
You'd think it would have some good backstory stuff, but it really just doesn't do a lot. It's got a lot of build up on paper. Like, oh man, the scientists that work with Odo's coming back. There's some good things we could see about the backstory, but it really doesn't do much for me. So I say skip that for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like the performances. I think Rene Auberjonois is one of my favorite actors in Trek. I would say I think he's one of the stronger performers. So when he gets heavy things to do, he's never really disappoints. But I would agree with you. I think it kind of doesn't deliver on some of the promise of the origin story stuff. You get much more interesting.
You like the guest star, but yeah,
he's a good actor, James Sloyan. The biggest one that I would probably disagree, I would have See It on the Circle for sure. That's one I would do, and I really like Whispers. I know Whispers is an easy one to kind of throw away because it doesn't pay anything off. Like it's not setting anything up. It's kind of a diversion. It's a single standalone episode sort of. But I do think. I think we talked about it before. It does offer some insight into how O'Brien feels about the crew and his interactions with people, even though it's not really it's a clone. It's not really him, but it thinks it's him, and he's reacting as O'Brien would in this situation. But I can see why, especially through this kind of exercise, that you could argue that it's a skip it for sure. And if you're not a fan of it, especially, I mean, the only way an episode like that is going to make us see it is by it, I guess, resonating with you personally, right? Like if it doesn't have, big character swings, it doesn't have big things, like it's not hanging a big ornament on the tree for the character or for the story of the show, it's an easy one to throw out if it's not one that you personally really get down with. And Whispers, I think, is a fair one to say. It doesn't necessarily like bring that much big stuff to the table. It's you're either going to be a fan or you're not of the episode on its own individual merits. Shadow Play we haven't really talked about. That's definitely one of those, like,
that was a tough call for me. Yeah,
I think that's a story that would work in a lot of other shows, and we've had similar stories in other shows actually too. I think that's one of those sort of I want to say the cookie cutter, but Enterprise had an episode very similar to it, Oasis. It reminds me of a TNG kind of story for sure. But there's this sweet little relationship.
Yeah, there's some
with Odo,
sweet morale
kid
stuff. Yeah,
it's got merit to it, but it's not. It's another one that doesn't. I don't know that it brings a ton to the table for the show as a whole. So if it's not one that you really are giving a high grade to, I guess it's an easy one to cut.
Yeah.
And I think the last one we haven't really touched on, and there's two actually, two of the skip-its. Invasive Procedures, you have a skip-it on. That's a Trill kind of. It's very much kind of like a Western, I think. I was thinking about the ending with Cisco and the bad Trill who kidnaps Dax. Dax like standing mano a mano. And Cisco phasers him. I can see the biggest problem I think I struggle with that episode is I think Quark makes some pretty questionable choices that are difficult.
Yeah.
He makes the right decisions at the end of the day, but he puts the crew in a pretty tight spot. And was that an easy call or was that a tough?
That was an easy call for me. Actually, I just really did not, really didn't enjoy that episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Profit and Loss, the Quark sort of love story with a Cardassian dissident political.
I would say that's a tough call for me because I like the different side of Quark we get, but there's some really, really good Garrick and Quark moments where they're talking, but there's different meanings behind it. I really, really like that. So there's some scenes in that. That was probably definitely a tough call for me. But yeah,
definitely some different sides of Quark. We get a lot of that, like, kind of mixed into different episodes here and there. But it is interesting to see Quark in a more soft story, I guess. Rules of Acquisition, though, you put a see it on. Is that largely the Dominion reference and push it out into the Gamma Quadrant? Like, really tough. I would
say it's definitely a C episode for me. But when you this early on, when you talk about the Dominion, and it's just like a little sliver, just a little, kind of could be not very important. But when you mention the Dominion and start building it from here on, I think it's great. And I love that they're kind of pushing the boundaries of trying to go, through the wormhole and do stuff on the other side and things like that. I do like that. But yeah, definitely probably middle of the road-ish kind of episode. But when you throw the Dominion in there, I feel like you gotta have that progression and that glow up, so to speak, with the Dominion.
Right. So a couple questions that I'd like to kind of pose to you as just more holistic, looking at the season, thinking about all these episodes as one. Which character do you think has been like most successful up to this point? Like, who stands out to you as like the most well drawn, most well developed, most sort of, especially since this is a rewatch? Like, who's the most final version of themselves already?
Already the final version.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I guess it's hard because there's so much development, but like, who feels the most complete as a character? Like, as far as connecting with them, I guess.
I think Kira is definitely not done growing and being explored, but I think they know how to write her and know how to really use her in some of these episodes.
Yeah.
But there's other characters, like even Dax. I think they're still trying to figure out. Even Bashir, they're trying to still figure out.
Yeah.
And then also they're still trying to figure out how to use the characters together.
Yeah.
So I would say if there was a character that they definitely know how to use, it's definitely Kira. Maybe Cisco. I think those two are kind of the big ones that I think that, okay, they know. It's a combination of the writers know how to write them and the actors know how to play them. And I think that makes for some good stuff. Even Odo, I think, really feels good as well. So probably those three, I think. Again, they're definitely not done growing. They're definitely not like we've arrived, but I think they're the arrived of where they are at the development of that character at that certain time. I think the rest of the characters really need time to develop. Maybe even Quark too. I think he's definitely there as well. So yeah, that's probably what I would kind of land on for sure.
I definitely misframed that question. It's impossible to, in season 2, think of these characters as complete because they all grow so much, and the show leans so heavily into
so much.
Yeah,
Kira, Cisco, it's big time.
Yeah, it's. I guess my question's more like, and you answered it with Kira, Cisco, Odo. I think, like, who's the most successful character so far? Like, who do you look forward to seeing? Who's the best? Developed to this point. And I think I would agree with you with that. AKA May was in the room and said Quark for her. Season 2 writers were still trying to figure out these writers, but there were some hidden gems for sure.
Yes.
And doubling back, Fitzy Calherb shared his favorite episodes, and he said Maquis 1 and 2, Collaborator, Wire, Necessary Evil, and Jemadar were his big favorites. Yes. Kira for him for the character as well. I think that's a pretty common take at this point in the show. I think Kira is such a specific character to that show because it does lean so heavily into the Bajoran backstory. It leads to so many opportunities for Kira to have important parts in these episodes and for stories to really hinge on her. And she's such a strong voice too. Like she's really well developed and well performed character. I think right off the bat and at this early point.
Fitzy Calherb mentioned the Jemadar.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about that. Let's.
I kind of want to talk about that for a little bit. Sure. I really enjoyed that episode. Definitely a dark horse for me as one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I love the kind of camping trip kind of setup to begin with. But one big thing, which they don't really take a lot of weight in the episode, but I want to tell you guys and Bill, that this to me was a big swing. The Odyssey, taking down the Odyssey, a galaxy class, the biggest and baddest, and the audacity that the Jemadar have to just
kamikaze.
When it's kamikaze, when it's injured and like down for the count, it's not a threat. That to me is like, okay, the Jemadar and the Dominion, they're here to play and they don't mess around. And I don't think they that doesn't come across in the episode, but I wanted to come across and tell you guys that. So
I think it comes across. I think I think it's a big deal for sure. I think especially knowing that this is right around the same time that All Good Things aired. So the Galaxy class ship is a ship you spent a lot of time on. The TNG is still a thing. The Enterprise D is still out there, and to see a ship just like that get beaten up and then mercilessly just completely
It's spanked.
Demolished.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the choice of the kamikaze run definitely drives home these guys are different. Like the Jem'Hadar are not like Klingons. They're not like Romulans. They're not like the alien of the week. These guys are not effing around. You're playing in their sandbox, and they want you out. Like they are not interested in playing games with you. And I think the actors like in the runabouts, responding like the reactions to like, whoa, that was a big deal. I think it lands. I think they do it pretty good.
And I think
you're right to drive it home because it's a huge flag to plant in the ground at the end of season 2 because the show's about to change.
And I like that the other side of the wormhole finally bites back. Like I feel like it was kind of at the beginning, it was kind of new and kind of fun to explore, but I think this is kind of when the definitely pushes back a little bit on that. So yeah, I mean, we get some stuff in the first episode, which I'll just briefly talk about that kind of adds some weight to it. But yeah, I guess you are right. They definitely add some weight to what just happened.
But it merits being driven home. Like it's a big
Yeah.
deal. It is their way of telling the audience that the Jem'Hadar are not the Dominion are not like a one-off baddie. Like these guys are not going away.
Yeah. I guess I'm spoiled because I can just watch the next episode into the next. But like if I try to put myself into, okay, I just saw that for the first time, and now I have to wait 6 to 8 months to next September to when they come around and then see. But it's just amazing that they did that. I love that they did that. That was cool.
Good. No, please.
I like that. I like the Odyssey. I like the the captain, the guest star is good. He's
credible as Starfleet captain.
He's credible. He feels like they're trying to drive home that he's kind of Picard-esque, and then the way he looks and acts, and even I think again that even drives it home even more. Yeah.
My favorite thing about the Jem'Hadar as an episode is that I think it's really well balanced. Like it's got those big developments with the Jem'Hadar and the Dominion. It goes to some deep, heavy places as far as like building on the mythology of the show. But equally good, I think, are the really simple character scenes with Quark and
the lighthearted
Sisko,
camping,
the camping stuff. But just like the Sisko and Quark arguing about human Ferengi differences and who's really the hypocrite here, who's really
Cuts deep.
really well written, really good stuff.
Yeah.
Quark makes a lot of really good points. He's
very good point. So like, Quark's right now, and then I think Sisko realizes that too. He's like, as frustrated as he is, he's like,
he called me on my BS for sure.
Yeah, he did.
I think that stuff is just as good, and that's the mark of a great Star Trek episode. I think it can do the big science fiction, big action adventure stuff really well, but when it boils all down, it's just as good when it's two characters having a conversation about humanity. Really, at the end of the day, it's the universal stuff that anybody can relate to. So I think that the Jem'Hadar is a really good season finale, really good way to end the season, and it does set up, I think, the shift that the show is going to see in season 3 and beyond. I think once you get into season 3, it starts leaning more heavily into the serialized stuff, and the Dominion are sort of a constant. They're not in every episode. Not every episode's the Dominion are knocking on our door to start a war, kind of an episode, but it's always kind of in the back of everybody's mind, and it's sort of bubbling beneath the surface all the time. The Jem'Hadar, I think, does a good job of teeing that up and establishing that that's where we're going. Any closing thoughts on season 2? Anything else you want to throw out there?
I don't think so. I'm excited for season 3. Spoilers, I did watch an episode or two last night of season 3, just because I think that transition from season 2 to season 3 is fun too, and I knew what was coming, and what was coming, which I really like. I love the client coming in there, and then that whole episode is fun. There's some things that I didn't remember, which I'll get into next next season when we talk about it. But yeah, I'm really excited for season 3. And I gotta get going because you're now on Deep Space Nine, so I gotta get my butt in gear, so to speak. So
we might be overlapping at some point.
Yeah.
It takes me a while to get through stuff now though because it's overlapping. I'm watching 2 seasons at a time, so
Yeah.
you're still a little bit well ahead of me.
Yeah.
You're like a couple of seasons ahead of me when I count everything in. So yeah, I'm very eager to hear what you think as you go. One of my favorite things to talk to you about is like this. I mean, Deep Space Nine, it's been a long time since you've seen it. You know the story. You know where it's going. You know where a lot of these characters go. You're very capable of carrying on a conversation about Deep Space Nine as a whole, based on your memory.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are a lot of things that, like you just said with the search, there are things that are going to surprise you because you don't, have an instant recall of everything, and that's what's so fun to talk about. I want to hear what surprises you. What you didn't remember from before, and how the second go around after being away from it for a while really how it works on you, especially as the show really gets into the nitty gritty of what it's known for. Yeah, really looking forward to more Deep Space Nine conversation. I'm sure we'll be doing more of these looks at the season. As you finish each one, we might do a couple fantasy drafts here and there as well. We like doing them as another way to kind of look at these episodes down the road. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Any Star Trek content you want
to? Trek Ranks was fantastic this week. I think they talked about
music, right?
Music. The intro and outro themes. There was some cheating involved, which was cool and fun. They didn't actually always pick the intro and outro themes for the given episodes, but definitely check that out. I'm not a big music guy, but I think they do a great job of making some good points and some fun stuff happen. So definitely go check it out. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely echo that. What else will I throw out there? I actually guessed it on a show last week or week before. Star Trek Exercise, it's called. It's a younger guy, like right out of college, very new to Star Trek, and I love talking to people like that who are like super fresh and don't know all the answers yet. One of the things I kind of latched onto right away. I listened to him at one point. He talked about loving season 3 of TOS, and that's just completely unimpacted by like the fandom assumptions and what people have talked about for years, and just kind of going on what he likes. And I love that. I love hearing what people who are just discovering the show and don't know what you're supposed to think or what the overall fandom kind of tells you. That I enjoy hearing. He likes Wesley Crusher. Like that, I just find that interesting and a different kind of conversation to have. I mean, I love certainly talking to you. You have some elements of that for sure because you haven't lived in the fandom for forever and ever and ever, decades and decades and decades, and that's one of the reasons that I latched onto you. But that's a conversation unto itself. Talking to somebody who we've had on like Thad and Rob, our kind of frequent flyer guests, Jim, people who have been on our show. Yeah. Who have lived in this all the time. They have a different, mindset. They've lived in this. This is their thing, and it's a different conversation when you're talking to somebody who doesn't even know it all yet, like hasn't even seen it all yet. They're still like discovering it for the first time. So I enjoy that. I enjoy talking to him, and you can find that on iTunes, anywhere you get the podcasts. And I would just shout out there like all the different shows that, kind of like we do on Course Heading. There's a lot of good Discovery episode recap content out there. Trek Geeks do a good one. Trek Movie does a good one.
Yes.
In print, Trek horror reviews are really good. Lots of cool deep cut references. Trek Central, their live stream conversations with Don Paris and Ketwalski are really in depth, really strong conversations. There's a ton out there of good stuff to maybe keep you busy during the holidays if you want to double back and listen and read Discovery content.
Yep.
If you're not up on all that stuff. Okay, I think that'll about do it for us. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. You can reach out to me to get an invite to the Discord server. We had a couple new people join this week. Just a place to share your Star Trek thoughts, talk about what you're watching, what you're reading, thoughts on new stuff as it airs. We occasionally have our Trek After Dark hangouts.
We're working on getting a Trek After Dark holiday party, so if you have any dates or thoughts about that, definitely send us a message. We're trying to work something out. So
yeah, we're hoping to have one in the next few weeks at some point here, which is a very casual, laid-back, non-broadcasted to the internet hangout for our Discord members. And we watch Star Trek, we play trivia, we just kind of hang out and chat. For those of age, we have some younger folks in there now, but depending on the legality of your own situation, we might have a drink or two. But it's a nice laid back way to kind of hang out and get to know Star Trek fans. And anybody's welcome to join. You can DM me on Twitter at TrekFan4387 if you're interested. I'll be happy to get you on board.
Again, we'll reiterate: you don't have to be on camera, you don't have to be on mic. You can be in chat. We've had plenty of people do that, and I don't think it takes away from the experience to add one bit. So
no, not at all. You can find this on YouTube in a couple of days, and you'll also find it where you find your podcasts. If you're listening to this is a live streamed video show by design. So the best way to experience it is on video at the least, but at best at our Periscope live streams. At least for now, we're on Periscope for the actual live content. Where you can comment, as you heard us referencing a couple of different folks that were in our live stream sharing their thoughts. And if you're watching us on YouTube, all those specifics are in the show notes below.
Cool.
For how to find that.
Yeah. It's been a good year.
Yeah. A lot of good episodes.
This is a lot of good episodes of Trek Live. Definitely go back and revisit them if you missed them. We'll be back next year for Trek Live, but we'll be back next week for Core Setting to talk about Discovery and all things new Trek. So definitely stay tuned.
Looking forward to it.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good new year if we don't see you.
Yep. Take care, everyone.